Okay, we're inside now, but just to kind of give you some sense of this place is just incredible. And like I said, it is so clean. This building is so beautiful. It's wood on the outside. This beautiful wood. The floor you could eat off. That's a Soviet capsule right there that actually went into space in the early 60s. I may come back around. Well, I'll tell you what, I will. I'll just walk over here and film inside of it. There's a V2 rocket in the background. I'm going to rotate this over so we can get a better view with one of those buzz bombs. That's an actual V2. There's the engine. I'm going to walk over like this. I mean, this is Smithsonian quality. I don't know how much you'll be able to see. I hate to rotate here, but... And then here's the hatch that went in. So there was no windows on this. It was just a round ball that they launched up into space called the R7. That was the rocket booster there that they were on. But they just climbed in that and they bolted them in with about 50 bolts, launched it into space. You couldn't see out, and then it came back down and landed on the ground. I'm just going to walk with this because we don't have a lot of time and I don't want to hold Mo up. So I'm going to tell him, Mo, just keep on going wherever you want to go. But there you can see a Gemini capsule. There's an Apollo capsule over here we'll see in a minute. Right over there you can just see it peeking out, an X-15. Right sitting on the ground below the X-15 is an SR-71. Numerous Soviet, Chinese fighter planes. And like I said, when we go over to the building with the airplanes, almost all of them are flyable, what they call zero time, which means they look like they just came out of the factory. And a guy by the name of Penn Store I used to work with, apparently still flies a lot of these airplanes. He's retired from the airline, but he gets his job, I guess if you could call it a job, I'd call it a dream, is just to go out and fly these airplanes at air shows. Here's a, I don't want to flip it again, here's a Titan II missile, ICBM. This is the ones that sat in those silos on the ground during the Cold War with multiple warheads, many megatons of nuclear destruction. This is what would have been underground, like in Tucson. There's 13 of these surrounding Tucson. That's what Papa did when he worked for the Martin Company. Was we moved to Arizona to install the Titan missiles, and then when that project was done, he decided he was tired of moving, so he retired. And essentially that's how we ended up in Arizona, was building the holes in the systems that allowed to put these Titan missiles. So over here you can see there an Apollo module capsule that was actually used. And there again, this is owned by Del Smith. He bought all of this. He owns Evergreen Airlines. I worked for him in the late 70s, early 80s. But all these museums, he bought all of this. It's a privately owned museum. And this stuff is all real stuff, or most of it, 90%. This is not just replicas. He's collected this stuff. Obviously, this lunar lander is not an actual lunar lander because they don't bring them back, but the spacesuits and all of that are. But what's just incredible to me is the fact, one, is that he's got all of this stuff, but more importantly, just how classy this building is and just everything about it. I mean, and the stuff he's got, you'll see when we get over to the airplanes, he has a gun collection, firearms. There's old cars that are, area or time of the airplane. So if it's an old biplane, he has a car of that era sitting next to it, or a truck that towed the airplane. So it's not just airplanes. It's, as you'll see, just stuff that, era stuff that go along with it. Here's an F4 Phantom just sitting there. There again, this isn't a replica, this is an F4. Two-place F4. Don't know if this one's flyable. It appears to be. And I'm just walking here. I don't have a lot of time. We were actually here for business, but I'm going to do the best job I can just to give some sense of the stuff that this guy has in his collection. This is vertical liftoff, so helicopters. And our contact, Captain Zenner, Director of Flight Standards for Evergreen, 747 pilot, was gracious enough to provide us with entry into the museum at no cost. So we told him we almost didn't show up for the meeting. We kind of got lost in the museum here. But anyway, we had our meeting. It was a very, very successful meeting. I feel very, I think it's very promising. We're going to get their business back. They went to one of our competitors on the navigation stuff, but I'm really hopeful that we're going to get their business back. He's talking about us coming back in January, and he wants to get his team together, and I'm going to bring some subject matter experts. But anyway, we're going to have another meeting, which means I'm going to get to come back to the museum. So that in and of itself was a reason that I wanted to be successful, as selfish as that sounds, that I just wanted to come to the museum. Now here's something really cool coming up. It's an SR-71, an actual SR-71. This one happens to be a two-place, which means it was a trainer. SR-71 actual, most of, well, they're all single place or single pilot, but obviously they got to train people, so they built a few of them that would hold two pilots so they could train pilots. So I don't know, you're not going to really get a sense of size here, but that engine is big. This airplane flies at 3 times the speed of sound, and no armament, no guns, no need. There's nothing that can shoot this airplane down. Not one of them has ever been shot down. There's not a missile that could catch it by the time they knew it's coming into their airspace at 80,000 feet. There's nothing they could do to essentially shoot it down. There's no airplane that could take off and catch it. There's no missile that they could launch that could catch it. It flies at between 80 and 100,000 feet. So it's essentially, it doesn't need any kind of armament. I'm going to walk around this guy taking a picture here. Oh, that's all right. Sorry. And here's an old MiG. I think this is a MiG 19 or MiG 21. Soviet. This is the equivalent of our old Sabre first jets that flew in the early years of Vietnam. This is a MiG 17. So this is what, if you heard of MiG Alley, or excuse me, Korea, not Vietnam, this is MiG Alley in Korea. This is what our Sabre pilots were flying against, which looks very similar to our Sabre as far as the big inlet in the front that sucked the air into the jet engine. This is a fully functioning airplane. It can be flown. I don't mean to get everybody dizzy here. Here's another Soviet aircraft. You can tell by the star on the tail. You can see one of NASA's F-5s. These are what the astronauts still today, kind of their own personal airplane when they're in training. They like them to fly a lot, at least the flying astronauts, so they get F-5s, and when they do like tours to talk to the public, or media tours and stuff, they'll fly around the country in an F-5 like this, and it's got the baby blue stripe on it, the NASA color. Unmanned aerial vehicle there. Gonna walk over here just to get a little closer shot of the X-15 hanging from the ceiling. This is what Chuck Yeager, Scott Crossfield, Neil Armstrong flew these. These were the aircraft that, after the X-1, which was what Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier, and they obviously made improvements over time, and eventually this X-15, which flew at like 8 times the speed of sound. And you can see, like, I don't know what the significance of that Jeep is there. I don't have time to read everything, but anyway, there's a Jeep, there's some old cars just sitting here, the old Mustang sitting next to, that's the back of an X-15 there. So that gives you some idea of size of a fighter plane. What you think of a fighter being small, like an X-15, in reality, it carries 1 pilot, maybe 2, depending on the configuration. But you can see, it's really not a small airplane when you look at it next to a Corvette or a Mustang. Here's a Learjet somebody donated to the museum. And this is an original Lear 24, which Bill Lear, this is the first type of Learjet that he built. It's about like a little fighter airplane. And I'll go inside here and just take a look. You can kind of get some idea what it's like inside. This is how the other half flies. Very small now compared to what corporate aircraft are like. You know, 6, 7 people, the most in the back. There's the cockpit. Very basic by today's standards, very small, rudimentary, but it's still, even by today's standards, this is one fast airplane. As far as speed goes, range, you know, you can probably get across the United States with it, but certainly not intercontinental. It's got the big wing tanks here, tip tanks. I think these hold, I want to say 300 gallons, which with jet fuel at 6.7, that's about 1,800 pounds of extra fuel on each tip, and then it's got fuel in the wings as well. So depending on, you know, the wind and the temperature and the performance of the engine kind of determines how far that airplane could fly. But it certainly gets you around the United States quick, and a lot better than getting on an airliner. Here's the bottom of the X-15, one of my favorite of all time. This is the stuff I grew up reading about, and the guys that flew them, and looking at pictures and different magazines and Popular Mechanics and little snippets on TV of guys like Scott Crossfield flying these things. But anyway, I'm about done in here. I think we're going to head over to the museum with the airplanes in it. There's the gift shop. That's always my favorite spot. Barb will understand what I mean by that. But we love the gift shop. Nick always loved the gift shop. I think I might buy a shirt before we leave too. But this is what they call a space part. So most of this is, not all, as you can see there's airplanes, but a lot of space stuff in here. From rockets, the Titan II, there's the Gemini capsule. We looked at the Apollo capsule. There's helicopters, there's rocket motors and different stuff. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. I think the X-15 is, the F-15 is a good spot to shut it off. And for some reason I'm having a problem shutting it off.